upcoming prelims ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನದಿಂದ budget becomes a very important idea because a lot of questions get their origin from budget. Polity ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನದಿಂದ article 107, 108 ಇಂದ ಹಿಡಿದು almost 120 ವರೆಗೂ ಕೂಡ entire idea of articles specific to budget are necessary. One thing we all need to remember is budget is not just an economic document. Budget is a socio-economic document along with political angles. What is the idea of a Vikasit Bharat? What is the idea of a developed India? This year's budget was the first budget prepared in the Kartavya Bhavan. That's what the finance minister said. So, Amrit Kal athwa Amrita PD anta ಏನು ಕರೆದಿದ್ದಾರೆ ಆ ಒಂದು ಶಕ್ತಿಯಿಂದ ಡ್ರೈವ್ ಆಗಿರೋ ಬಜೆಟ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾರೆ ಪರ್ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟಿವ್ಲಿ ಮೂರು ಕರ್ತವ್ಯಗಳನ್ನು ಸೃಷ್ಟಿ ಮಾಡಿಕೊಂಡಿದೆ. Rare earth minerals have got very high significance. China has been the global supplier of rare earth minerals. India also has good reserves. So, how are we going to deal with that? Finance minister spoke of how biopharma can become a clear power to India. It can drive India's growth. So, what is biopharma? So, here it is design, fabrication, assembly, testing, marketing and packaging. Everything comes along. Textile has larger relevance when it comes to exam. PM Jan Mitra Yojana, technical textiles you are talking of. Last 2 years budget have spoken about this. Economics is going to be a very, very important area this year given the budget and the economic survey. Along with that, the finance commission comes into picture. Fiscal consolidation, it's a very, very important roadmap. If an economy has to be stable, if the economy has to ensure parameters are strong, manage the risk that the global economy can face, consolidation is a primary idea. Last year budget talked about direct tax, specifically income tax. This year, through the year, we saw there was GST rationalization, right? From 4 slabs, we came down to 2 slabs. These 2 tax benefits have played a major role. Questions will definitely come. Questions can come from schemes, questions can come from trends related to budget, new ideas that have been introduced to the budget. Hello everybody, a very warm welcome to all of you. This is February and in Indian parliamentary idea, February 1st budget gets presented. Budget is a very important document and for all of us who prepare for competitive exams, budget becomes extremely important. ಸ್ಪರ್ಧಾತ್ಮಕ ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆಗಳ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನದಿಂದ ಎಸ್ಪೆಷಲಿ UPSC ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆಯ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನದಿಂದ upcoming prelims ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನದಿಂದ budget becomes a very important idea because a lot of questions get their origin from budget. Where did this question come from? How did this question have an origin in itself? Where was the linkage coming in? Budget gives you a link. So, ಈ ವರ್ಷದ budget February 1ನೇ ತಾರೀಕು present ಆಗಿದೆ. Specifically, this was a Sunday and the government went ahead and presented the budget. We have already gone through the economic survey. The economic survey has given a lot of inputs in terms of what was the year that has gone by. But budget is about the upcoming year. Kannadadalli budget anna ನಾವು ಮುಂಗಡ ಪತ್ರ ಅಂತೀವಿ. The idea of calling it as an estimate because budget is a collection of estimates as such. So here we are to present to you the idea of budget 2026-27. But when we talk of the budget, all of you have to have a clarity about the basics of the budget. What is a budget? Where did this term called budget come from? Does Indian constitution have the term called budget? If not, then what is the term? Why do we call it an annual financial document? Who was the first person to present budget in India? Constitutionally, how has budget been designed? What is the idea of a revenue budget and a capital budget? What gets included, what doesn't get included? What are the different types of budget? What is an interim budget? Many such questions is something that you should have clarity upon. This is something called budget basics. Questions are dealt with what is coming in the budget, but budget basics are as important as it is. So, go through our video in the same playlist where we talk about all the budget basics necessary. Every concept of budget, constitutional understanding of budget is necessary. Polity ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನದಿಂದ article 107, 108 ಇಂದ ಹಿಡಿದು almost 120 ವರೆಗೂ ಕೂಡ entire idea of articles specific to budget are necessary. This will help you understand all the budget basics. So, budget basics video na ellaru kuda nodi, it's already there, it gives you a complete understanding. ಕಳೆದ 2 ವರ್ಷಗಳಲ್ಲಿ 109 ಬಂದಿದೆ. When 110 is about money bill, 109 has been asked. In that line, overall understanding of budget basics is necessary and I hope all of you will definitely go through. In this specific video, we will be talking about this year's budget. So here we are to discuss budget 2026-27, the 9th continuous budget that Madam Nirmala Sitharaman is presenting. So it's a record in itself. Everything around the budget naturally comes to discussion. It is a very, very important idea. One thing we all need to remember is budget is not just an economic document. Budget is a socio-economic document along with political angles. There's a wonderful definition that says it's a list of programs with price tags attached. That's how you see budget. But that's a different note. While we discuss budget today, let me tell you one thing very clear. For all of you who are understanding, here is an overview of the budget. We'll go to every aspect of the budget, try understand ಈ ವರ್ಷದ ಬಜೆಟ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಏನೆಲ್ಲ ಇದೆ, what is all that is covered in the budget, we'll try to understand. Both part A and part B will try to understand. However, we will not stop only at this. This year, we will do an explanatory series specifically taking in those specific aspects, those core aspects that budget has touched upon. What is this? What is the relevance to the exam? As of now, prelim season, so how can questions come from each of them? So we'll do an explanatory series. That series is coming up. But today's class specifically is dealing with the entire idea of how do we deal with this year's budget. What is important, what is not, what you should understand, what you should leave just like that, what you should just observe, try to grasp something. So from an exam orientation, UPSC Civil Services exam orientation, competitive exams orientation, let's try to understand budget. ಸ್ಪರ್ಧಾತ್ಮಕ ಪರೀಕ್ಷೆಗಳ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನದಿಂದ ನಾವು ಈ ಮುಂಗಡ ಪತ್ರವನ್ನು ನೋಡೋದಾದ್ರೆ ಹೇಗೆ ನೋಡಬೇಕು, ಯಾವ ರೀತಿ ಪ್ರಶ್ನೆಗಳು ಬರ್ತವೆ ಅನ್ನೋದನ್ನ ಅರ್ಥ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಳ್ಳೋಣ. This is going to be a real enriching idea for all of you who want to understand the idea of the budget, specifically looking at from competitive exams perspective. We deal it in and out. So welcome to all of you once again. We are taking up budget of 2026-27. Every year budget has a theme. This year also budget carried a theme. It had a specific structure. And there were many firsts of this year's budget also. What is all that is something that we are trying to see. So once again, let's start up this year's budget. Let me repeat at the cost of repetition, this is a large overview. We will come up with explanatory series where we will pick up specific terms, discuss them from exam perspective. Let us start now. So 2026-27 budget, 9th budget of Madam Nirmala Sitharaman continuously. Any law you look at the budget, this caricature becomes a very important idea. You understand a beautiful perspective of this, what is done. There are multiple priorities that comes for a government. Everything is important, but budget needs to balance. So here they are, the finance minister and the prime minister balancing a lot of priorities that the country has. Everything is important. You are playing around with numbers. You are looking at different schemes and programs. Balance becomes important. That is why we started telling ಬಜೆಟ್ ಅನ್ನ ಕೇವಲ ನಾವು ಆರ್ಥಿಕತೆಯ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನದಿಂದ ಅಷ್ಟೇ ನೋಡೋಕ್ಕಾಗೋದಿಲ್ಲ, ಬಜೆಟ್ ಒಂದು ಸಾಮಾಜಿಕ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನದಿಂದ ನೋಡಬೇಕು. ಸೊ ಇಟ್ಸ್ ಅ ಸೋಷಿಯೋ ಎಕನಾಮಿಕ್ ಪೊಲಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಡಾಕ್ಯುಮೆಂಟ್, ದ ಪೊಲಿಟಿಕಲ್ ಪ್ರಯಾರಿಟೀಸ್ ಆಫ್ ದಿ ಗವರ್ಮೆಂಟ್, ದಿ ವೋಟ್ ಬ್ಯಾಂಕ್ ದಟ್ ಯು ಆರ್ ಟಾರ್ಗೆಟಿಂಗ್, ಅಲಾಂಗ್ ವಿತ್ ದಟ್ ದ ಸೋಷಿಯಲ್ ವೆಲ್ಫೇರ್ ಐಡಿಯಾ, right? All this has to effectively marry along the economics. That's why there is infrastructure, there is connectivity, there is technology, there is agriculture, all aspects of the economy very effectively balanced along. That's why the balancing exercise comes. Who does this? No other than the finance minister. So how do they have taken this forward? That's something that we are understanding. So let's introduce the idea. This year's budget 26-27 had a very clear theme. It said Vikasit Bharat, balancing ambition with inclusion. Now we all understand post 2022, the theme slogan statement of the government has been of heading towards a Vikasit Bharat, a developed India. By 2047, that's 100 years of India's independence, ನಾವು ನಮ್ಮ ದೇಶವನ್ನು ಒಂದು ವಿಕಸಿತ ರಾಷ್ಟ್ರವಾಗಿ ನೋಡಬೇಕು ಅನ್ನೋ ಕನಸನ್ನ ಹೊತ್ತಿದ್ದೀವಿ. So for a Vikasit Bharat, we need to balance priorities. That is why it is telling balancing ambition with inclusion. And inclusion for a country like India becomes very, very important because we are a very large country, and as a large country we have diverse priorities coming into our mind. So balancing ambition and inclusion is the theme that they talk about in this year's budget. Now, when Madam Nirmala started her budget, she talked about on the auspicious day of Magh Purnima, on the birth anniversary of Guru Ravidas. Now, yes, this is just a mention from the perspective, but we are students of civil services, we are students of competitive exams, anything can become a question. So what is Magh Purnima? What is the significance of Magh Purnima? That is something you need to know. This idea of Magh Purnima, which month and from the Hindu calendar. Remember, there was a question in UPSC where it talked about different calendars. So we follow a Saka era calendar, we have a Vikram Samvat, we also have what is called the Gregorian calendars. Which calendar we follow? Magh Purnima is about which calendar? The holy months. The last year was Mahakumbh. Now that Mahakumbh again involved many of these ideas. So don't be surprised if you see a question related to this, because the start of the budget was talking about Magh Purnima. And this has relevance when we talk about the idea here, because Magh Purnima is not only significant from the Hindu traditions point of view, it also has significance from the Buddhist idea. So Buddhism also has something called Magh Purnima and the significance of Magh Purnima. So for all of you as competitive exam aspirants, look at Magh Purnima specifically from a calendar orientation, the significance from Hinduism as a religion, significance from Buddhist as a culture perspective. That is something that you have to start with. The second line she started is about the Guru Ravidas birth anniversary. So who is Guru Ravidas? What is the importance of it? So we all know from art and culture perspective, religion becomes an important idea. Bhakti Sufi movements become a very important idea. So Guru Ravidas followed a tradition of Nirguna Bhakti cult. So what is Nirguna Bhakti cult? What is the important idea? Specifically among the Dalit communities, he is a very revered Guru, right? So from that perspective, you should know Guru Ravidas, what are his important contributions. Further ahead, the Guru Granth Sahib, which is the Sikh religion's most revered sculpture. Guru Granth Sahib has almost 41 hymns, and that is why he is also called Bhagat Ravidas. So Guru Ravidas also has a mention. So Magh Purnima and Guru Ravidas are expected questions. Don't be surprised if it comes along. Just get to know the basics of questions can definitely come. That is the start. Yes, this is nothing specific as budget, but this is something that can definitely become a question you should be able to answer. Taking it forward here, now coming specific to the budget. We talked about balancing ambition with inclusion. This was a budget largely driven by Yuva Shakti. That's how the budget spoke of. So here, balancing ambition with inclusion, how did we talk about? Because the vision is of a Vikasit Bharat. So here, what is the idea of a Vikasit Bharat? What is the idea of a developed India? This is something that has been spoken from the last continuous budget. So just running through that idea. We talk about zero poverty, 100% good quality school education, access to high, affordable, comprehensive healthcare, so poverty, education, healthcare that is taken. Then talk about 100% skilled labor, so employment coming into the picture along with skilling. 70% women in economic activities, that's a target that we are setting up. Farmers making a country's food basket of the world. So these were specific themes put across in 2025-26 budget. The idea of a Vikasit Bharat, these schemes carry importance. So there is poverty, there is education, there is health, there is employment. They also talk about women and they also talk about farmers. So all this is the idea of inclusion. This year's budget theme is balancing ambition with inclusion. So this is the inclusion that we talk about. And that is for a larger vision of Vikasit Bharat. So remember these themes can become very, very important from a prelims perspective, from a mains perspective exclusively. When you are writing an essay, this can become a structure. When you are writing an answer in GS paper 3, this can become a structure. This is how you need to build up points and code the survey, code the budget. The budget 25-26, this year's budget 26-27 talks about the vision of Vikasit Bharat, and you talk about no more authenticity than talking about from the budget perspective as such. Going now forward, this year's budget was the first budget prepared in the Kartavya Bhavan. That's what the finance minister said. So what is Kartavya Bhavan? Right? Now, we all know over the years, the government has made considerable changes in terms of how the new parliament came up, how the new central vista has been designed. All this has been given new namings as such. Right? So, starting from the Prime Minister's house, which was called the 7 Racecourse Road, it is now called the Lok Kalyan Marg. Right? Then every other Rajpal, which is your governor's house, were now called, it was called Raj Bhavan, now it is called Lok Bhavan. Similarly, the central annex or the central vista of with the picture that you are seeing in the background has multiple government offices built across with modern facilities. Each one of them are called Kartavya Bhavan. So Kartavya Bhavan is a name given to the entire central annex specific to these government buildings. This is the background of Central Vista, which is completely redesigned. The new parliament you can see in the picture, and Kartavya Bhavan is where this year's budget was prepared. So she started telling that the first budget prepared in Kartavya Bhavan. So basic idea that you need to know. I am not expecting a question specifically, but with considerable name changes. Lok Kalyan Marg, Lok Bhavan, Kartavya Path, the Rajpath, where the Republic Day parade happens, was also called Kartavya Path. Now Kartavya Bhavan. All these name changes are in a continuous flow. So there can be something. You should use it as part of ethics GS paper 4 on that line. That's how the budget was put forward. This year's budget has a larger idea of what was called as a Yuva Shakti driven budget. India, we all know, has a very high demographic dividend. The youth are going to take India to the future. That's why this Amrit Kal of the next 25 years and the Amrit PD was the term that was given. So Amrit Kal ಅಥವಾ ಅಮೃತ PD ಅಂತ ಏನು ಕರೆದಿದ್ದಾರೆ, ಆ ಒಂದು ಶಕ್ತಿಯಿಂದ ಡ್ರೈವ್ ಆಗಿರೋ ಬಜೆಟ್ ಅಂತ ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರೋ ಪರ್ಸ್ಪೆಕ್ಟಿವ್ ಅಲ್ಲಿ ಮೂರು ಕರ್ತವ್ಯಗಳನ್ನು ಸೃಷ್ಟಿ ಮಾಡ್ಕೊಂಡು. So what are these three kartavyas, right? So the entire budget we will build a structure using these three kartavyas. ಈ ಮೂರು ಕರ್ತವ್ಯಗಳ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಯಿಂದ ಎಂಟೈರ್ ಬಜೆಟ್ ಅನ್ನು ನೋಡೋಣ. That way you will be able to remember easily and gives you a very good structure also. What are the three kartavyas, right? So first kartavya is to accelerate and sustain economic growth, right? ದೇಶದ ಪ್ರಗತಿಯನ್ನ ನಾವು ಹೇಗಿದೆಯೋ ಆ ಬೇಸಿಸ್ ಮೇಲೆ we should accelerate and then sustain. The first kartavya is that. The second kartavya is to fulfill aspirations of people, build their capacity. Fulfill the aspirations, build their capacity so that it can be taken forward. Third kartavya is to align our vision to Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas, okay, which is nothing but inclusive growth. So ಮೂರು ಕರ್ತವ್ಯಗಳು, ಅದನ್ನೇ ಒಂದು ಇನ್ಫೋಗ್ರಾಫಿಕ್ ಆಗಿ ನೋಡಬೇಕು ಅಂತಂದ್ರೆ a Yuva Shakti driven budget with three kartavyas taken into consideration. Kartavya number 1, accelerating and sustaining economic growth. Kartavya number 2, fulfilling the aspirations of people, building their capacity. In Kartavya number 3, it is about aligning to everybody, the vision of Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas, taking everybody along. Ee ಮೂರು ಕರ್ತವ್ಯಗಳನ್ನು ನೋಡೋಣ. Now the entire budget will be discussed in these three frameworks. So framework will be kartavyas. So Kartavya number 1, under which what all has the budget spoken of. Kartavya number 2, under which what all has the budget spoken of. This is how we are going to study, okay. So once again, the larger idea of budget 26-27, it's a document, it's a socio-economic political document giving you a vision for next 1 year of what the government wants to do, how the government wants to take it forward. In this line, they're talking of three specific kartavyas. Now let's go with the first kartavya. ಮೊದಲ ಕರ್ತವ್ಯದಲ್ಲಿ we all know it is spoken about accelerating and sustaining economic growth. ಭಾರತದ ಪ್ರಗತಿಯ ದರ ಏನಿದೆ ಅದನ್ನ ಒಂದು ನಾವು ಮುಂದುವರಿಸ್ತಾ ಹೋಗಬೇಕು. We should accelerate and then we should sustain. No growth can have a spike. It cannot be high frequency that you grow and fall. It has to be a sustained growth, especially for a large country like India with huge development responsibilities, a very diverse population. We have the richest people in the world. We also have huge number of population below poverty line. It is important to sustain this growth. So the first kartavya is accelerating and sustaining economic growth. In that sense, ಈ ಮೊದಲ ಕರ್ತವ್ಯ ದೃಷ್ಟಿಕೋನದಿಂದ what all programs have been announced, what are all the touch points that we are looking at. Let's see that. There are about 6 specific points under which we are looking at. Look at the words that are also and really important. 1, scaling up manufacturing in 7 strategic sectors. So scaling up manufacturing in 7 strategic sectors. Second, rejuvenating legacy industrial sectors. So there are legacy industries we need to rejuvenate, okay. Third, creating champion SMEs. We have all understood through the economic survey also, MSMEs are going to play a very important role. They are critical for India's development. So how we are champion SMEs that are coming up. So scale, rejuvenate and create. Next, delivering a powerful push to infrastructure. We have always realized over the last 25 years, India's primary priority has been infrastructure and investment. So you need to create, deliver powerful push to infrastructure. Then ensuring long-term energy security and stability. India is not an energy surplus country. So it is important that we ensure there is long-term energy security which ensures stability. So how do we do that? And last, developing city economic regions. Urban areas are going to be growth engines which are going to drive growth across. So how do we do that? So, under the first Kartavya, there are 6: scale, rejuvenate, create, deliver, ensure and develop. So, what are you scaling up? You are scaling up manufacturing in 7 strategic sectors. Then you are rejuvenating something. What? There are some legacy industries which are as of now looking dead. How can you rejuvenate them? Third, you are going to create what? Champion SMEs. For India, MSME sector is going to be the primary area. So, how can you champion those MSMEs or SMEs, small manufacturing enterprises? So, scale, rejuvenate and create, then deliver. Deliver a very clear push to infrastructure, powerful push to infrastructure. Ensure long-term energy security and stability, energy being primary. And last, develop city economic regions. Urban areas are going to be a growth driver. So, these are under the first Kartavya, the 6 strategic areas that we are looking at. Now, let us look at it one by one. The first one is about scaling. So, we are looking at scaling manufacturing in 7 strategic areas. So, manufacturing becomes a very important understanding, the second sector of your economic growth. In that sense, what all are we looking at scaling up? Because every of them becomes very, very important. One, biopharma Shakti. It is a new term for us to understand, but what is biopharma? What is going to be its benefit? We will try and understand. Second, semiconductor. So, India has now come up with its semiconductor mission 2.0. Why are semiconductors important? What will be the benefit? So, biopharma, semiconductor mission. Third, electronic components manufacturing. Given the importance of semiconductors, India wants to establish itself as a global hub for electronic components manufacturing. That is the third strategic area. Fourth, rare earth minerals corridor. We all understand over the last 1 year, 2 years, especially after the Trump era starting in US now, rare earth minerals have got very high significance. China has been the global supplier of rare earth minerals. India also has good reserves. So, how are we going to deal with that? Next, dedicated chemical parks. We want to explore new areas. Given that benefit, chemical parks coming in. Strengthening capital goods capability. Capital goods are going to be the primary driver. So, how are we strengthening that? And last, integrated program for textile sector. India has a traditional strength in textile sector. From Indus Valley era till now, we are looking at how textiles have played a major role in trade and commerce. So, we are looking at these 7 strategic areas. 1, biopharma. 2, semiconductors. 3, electronics manufacturing. And 4, rare earth mineral corridors. 5, we are looking at chemical parks coming into picture. 6, the capital goods. And 7, integrated program for textiles. So, these are the 7 strategic areas. Now, I am not dealing each one of them in detail. You have the fine print of the budget everywhere available, but for this exam orientation, let us touch that idea now. Okay? So, going back to the structure, we have talked about 3 Kartavyas. Under the first Kartavya, we talked about 6 specific areas. Under that, the first one was about scaling. Scaling what? Manufacturing in 7 strategic areas. So, these 7 strategic areas, we are going to touch some of them purely from exam perspective. What questions can come? What is that you need to know? Right? So, that is the larger overview we are going to touch. Specific explainer series will come up later. Biopharma Shakti. The finance minister spoke of how biopharma can become a clear power to India. It can drive India's growth. So, what is biopharma? In very simple terms, we need to understand using biology, right. So, bio plus pharma, that is how simple you try to understand. Pharma is about medicines and biopharma, that is how the idea comes into specific. So, in that line, if you have to understand that biopharma can be a Shakti itself. Look at the word, strategy for healthcare advancement through knowledge, technology and innovation, right. Now, there are a lot of issues that the country faces and the world faces. These can be silent killers like cancer, these can be issues which do not come into larger consideration like diabetes, which is a major issue in India, and there can be some rare genetic disorders. All these have their medicines in biopharma. So, if there is very good investment into biopharma, specifically talking about knowledge, technology and innovation. So, if we are able to do that, the Shakti of biopharma is going to definitely benefit India. Here, from an exam perspective, you need to have very clear understanding of what is biopharma. There is another word in the same line called biosimilars. So, for biopharma to biosimilars, you need to have an idea. Okay? just coming back on the same line. So, in that idea of biopharma Shakti, so there is also a perspective called biosimilars. So, you should know the difference between biopharma and biosimilars. Okay? These are not the same. Biopharma is specific medicine, they are largely costly. How can we invest on that to bring down the cost? Biosimilars are comparatively cheap, already worked on in India. So, that difference you should know from exam perspective. But here the idea of Shakti is taking into knowledge, innovation and healthcare specific in terms of technology, how biopharma can become a major idea. So, biopharmaceuticals, referred medicines that are going to be used and how they can be specifically taken in consideration of complete clean, right. So, you are taking care of the necessity and also building across as a global hub for that. Biopharma is one major idea. From an exam perspective, what is biopharma? How is it different? What is it going to try? As I said, cancer, rare genetic disorders, diabetes, from this to many other, this can be a single hand solution. So, India is now working on this strategic sector where there will be more investments coming in. We are looking at knowledge, technology and innovation that line. Going ahead further, the second area is about the semiconductor mission. We all understand the importance of semiconductors. Global supply chains were very badly disrupted during the COVID time, after which semiconductors have become a talk of the world. All your major automobile manufacturing, major electronic components manufacturing have dependency on semiconductor. India needs to work very effectively in this line. So, 2.0, this is not the first semiconductor mission, India is now launching the second semiconductor mission, that is why it is about ISM 2.0. So, here we need to understand what are the raw materials for semiconductor, what does it require, right. So, we talk about not only research and development, we also talk about fabrication. Not only fabrication does not stop there, further goes ahead in terms of design, packaging and delivery. So, all aspects, that is why it is an integrated semiconductor mission. So, here it is design, fabrication, assembly, testing, marketing and packaging, everything comes along. So, semiconductor mission 2.0 is going to be the second strategic area, very important from India's strength perspective, given Hyderabad, Bangalore, also now in terms of Gujarat and other regions taking the lead specific to semiconductor manufacturing. This is going to be a very important area to watch out. And from an exam perspective, what are the raw materials, right? From an exam perspective, what are the raw materials? How are they going to benefit? These are things that will be questions, right? So, semiconductor mission is important, take in that line, all these aspects we will specifically deal with, right? Now, that is the second strategic area. Going ahead, the next one, dedicated rare earth mineral corridors. So, this year's budget specifically spoke about rare earth mineral corridors. Now, from an exam perspective, we need to understand what are rare earths, what are the importance of rare earth minerals, how are they going to benefit. Now, we all understand rare earth has been in news from quite some time, a lot of understanding, lot of material has come out in terms of rare earth. From an exam perspective, what is rare earth? Where is rare earth available across the world? Where is rare earth available in India? Where are they used? Now, we are talking of rare earth mineral corridors, which means how are we going to develop those corridors? Remember, the moment we talk of corridors, it is not only about mining, it is also about using them from an integrated perspective. So, you will have to integrate manufacturing, you will have to integrate delivery and packaging, all aspects come into consideration. So, this is going to be a very big important area from an economy's perspective, definitely going to generate a lot of jobs. Internationally is going to build a lot of strategic significance for the country. India has good amount of rare earth deposits. Where and that locations is what's touched upon, because developing rare earth corridors, they are now identified 4 specific states, which is Odisha, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh and Kerala, given the larger deposits of monazite sands and related rare earth minerals. You should also know the prelims of 2020, okay, effectively 2024 prelims had questions related to this. So, 2024 prelims on that line had questions of rare earth. 2024 prelims had questions on rare earth. It talked about, does India have all rare earth minerals, right? Obvious answer was no. So, given one question has already come related to rare earth, we should know how this question is going to become important. So, there are PYQs that have come. In that line, you have to understand the importance of these questions. What are the different rare earths that are going to be important? And on that line, you will have to develop the specific concept. Okay, so that's the idea that you have to build and take it forward. So, as we spoke of Odisha, Andhra, Tamil Nadu and Kerala, specific places that we are looking up, these are the rare earths available in terms. This is something that we deal with specific as part of the explainer series that we talked about, but rare earth is a definite strategic area. We talked about biopharma, we have talked about semiconductor mission and that dedicated rare earth corridors. Okay. So, this is something that we have spoken of. Going further now, dedicated chemical parks. It is important for India to diversify. Chemicals are going to be very important for any sort of manufacturing. So, India has now spoken of coming up with 3 dedicated chemical parks, and these chemical parks are going to benefit large scale diversification of industries, value adding to all manufacturing that happens to India. So, our dependency will come down. So, here we are talking of basic chemicals, petrochemicals, specialty chemicals, agrochemicals and also pharmaceuticals. So, remember chemicals and fertilizers ministry is what we call where pharmaceuticals also comes in, right. Now, it is moved to Department of Ministry of Health. Earlier, the idea of Department of Chemicals and Fertilizers under Ministry of Fertilizers was dealing with pharmaceuticals also. So, chemical parks has its importance in pharmaceuticals also. So, never confuse that perspective. So, India is now working on 3 dedicated chemical parks and there basic chemicals, petrochemicals, specialty chemicals, agrochemicals and pharmaceuticals they are looking at. Value chains coming into picture, India has a larger benefit given the larger establishment, larger demand that comes in. Okay. So, this is another strategic area that we are looking at. Further going ahead. Now, what is one important thing that we have observed in this budget is, every time we spoke of chemical parks, semiconductor mission, rare earth mineral corridors, they used one word. We will go in challenge mode. We will go in challenge mode. So, what is challenge mode? Right? What is the difference from what it was prior? Till now, we were continuously hearing the word mission mode. So, it is a mission mode project. Now, this year's budget talks about challenge mode. What is the difference between a challenge route, challenge mode or a mission mode? In simple understand, challenge mode is performance oriented. Okay. Here, money will simply not come, money will follow performance. If targets are met, then it comes in. In simple terms, if you have, it is a conditional cash transfer idea. So, most of our projects that we have spoken up will now come as part of the challenge mode. So, that is the challenge idea that we are talking of, where it will be related further. Now, what was it prior? The prior was mission mode projects. In mission mode projects, the central government will take charge and central government will deliver irrespective. Right. So, it was not tied up to performance. So, central government would be the primary idea. There are specific missions that are set and result oriented programs will come. So, that is the idea that comes between challenge route and the mission mode project. So, do not be surprised if question comes, it is part of the syllabus. GS paper 3 has a clear topic called investment models. And when we talk of challenge mode or challenge route, you should know the difference between what is earlier existing and how it coming. We will deal with this a little better when we take it further. As of now, you should know the name. Okay. Going up further as such, in the same line. One other very important area is textile. We all understand the importance of textile, and textile specifically for a large country like India, since ancient history, textile has played a very important role in terms of the importance that it has come into picture. So, one, textile has a huge significance when it comes to trade. India has a traditional strength in textile. We are not focusing only on one type of textile, we are focusing on multiple types of textile. That is also something that you know. First, what is this year's budget talking about? If you have to just look at that line, right, there are multiple things this specific year's budget talking about. One, Mahatma Gandhi Gram Swaraj initiative. So, there is a specific scheme called Mahatma Gandhi Gram Swaraj initiative where we are talking of Gram Swaraj oriented. So, there is Khadi spoken about there, handlooms and handicrafts on that scheme. Second, we are also talking of Summer 2.0 for textile skilling ecosystem. So, 2.0 textile skilling of Summer. Third, national fiber scheme specifically in terms of jute, silk and many others coming into consideration, natural fibers, man-made fibers. Then, textile expansion, national handloom handicraft program, and more important idea, Tex Eco initiative. So, no textile will just be like that, but an ecological initiative will be taken. This is something the present budget has been spoken about. But we all know textile has larger relevance when it comes to exam. The PM Jan Mitra Yojana, Technical textiles you are talking of. Last 2 years budget have spoken about this. India wants to become a global hub in technical textiles. So, from the idea of technical textiles, questions can become very relevant. So, what are technical textiles? What is the use of technical textiles? Specifically in the area of sports, in the area of agriculture, right? All that, what are textiles used? These are called technical textiles. So, there is specific idea of what is called geotextiles. So, what are geotextiles? Because these are again focus areas. They are not mentioned in this year's budget probably, but they have been in use, and last 2 years budget this was taken. So, textile gets its focus as it is. It is a very important area, right. So, we have talked about national handloom, national fiber, we have talked about new scheme called Mahatma Gandhi Gram Swaraj initiative, right. While all this is there, this also will remain very relevant. So, from that perspective, textile is very important, okay. So, just summarizing, we spoke of 3 kartavyas. Under the 3 kartavyas, the first one was accelerating and sustaining growth, under which we spoke of 6 strategic areas, under which the first one was manufacturing, scaling up manufacturing in 7 strategic areas coming into picture, and there we spoke of all this which are very important, right, be it semiconductor, biopharma, rare earth mineral corridors, chemical parks, textiles coming into picture. All of them are very important, taking up further, okay. Now, let us go ahead. Right, delivering powerful push to infrastructure. Now, this is something that we have already spoken and how important it is. Infrastructure is a very important area for the country. We have been continuously investing on infrastructure. You can look at the capital investment that has increased, right. There is a data from 2015 to 2025. The last 10 years, the public investment in capital infrastructure has increased from almost 2 lakh to almost 17 lakh crore. That is how much the jump has been. So, here you see continuous increase in the capital expenditure from the government side from almost 2019-20, which was about 5.2, now it has jumped to 17.1, right. So, this is how the jump comes in lakh crore. So, continuous jump that has been seen, right. So, this gives the importance of how infrastructure is going to be primary. Which are the areas of infrastructure that we are looking at? Almost all of them, because they are going to deliver development, lead to economic expansion and create growth. Now, one, we talk of seaplane VGF scheme. So, what is VGF? This is going to be important. Again, it is part of your investment idea. So, when we talk of seaplane VGF, we will talk of what is seaplane, but VGF becomes a very important idea. So, if you have to note the idea of VGF, VGF is viability gap funding, okay. So, seaplane VGF is from the coastal corridor perspective, while we talk of UDAN, which is regional connectivity scheme for airplanes and airports to be built. We are talking of India having a peninsular belt and that giving a larger push not only from tourism perspective, but also connectivity. So, seaplane VGF. So, VGF is an investment mode which is viability gap funding, government will pitch in, but seaplanes to be introduced. New dedicated freight corridors, this is a wonderful idea. We already have 2 dedicated freight corridors, that is the western dedicated freight corridor. The western dedicated freight corridor goes from the west, which is Delhi to Mumbai, right. So, Delhi to Mumbai is western dedicated. We also have the eastern dedicated freight corridor. The eastern dedicated freight corridor is from Amritsar to Kolkata. So, this we already have. This year's budget talks about a new dedicated freight corridor. So, the new dedicated freight corridor goes from where to where, right. That is also something that comes in. Again, remember, this is infrastructure push. 20 new waterways coming into picture. 7 high-speed rail corridors coming into picture. So, a lot of such things and the exclusive push for infrastructure. So, we will understand them a little in detail. First, dedicated freight corridor. We already said there are 2 dedicated freight corridors, which is your eastern dedicated freight corridor and western dedicated freight corridor. Now, we have a new dedicated freight corridor which is called the east-west freight corridor, okay. So, from the India's map perspective, we had one from Delhi to Mumbai and we had one from Amritsar to Kolkata. Now, you have a freight corridor which is going all in between, that is how you have to look at the idea. So, from that perspective, if you look at it, is starting from Surat and then to Dankuni. Dankuni is West Bengal, Surat is Gujarat. So, it is the east-west corridor. East-west dedicated freight corridor. Remember the word freight. Freight is about goods transport and dedicated to freight. This is a railway corridor that comes in. There will be high-speed rail that will be going across. This is not for passenger transport. This is for freight. So, lot of industrial areas in this line will get connected. Surat, remember, is a very high hub also from textiles and diamonds coming into picture, and Dankuni in West Bengal is very much in terms of mineral rich areas. It goes across states. So, starting from Surat, Gujarat, then Maharashtra, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, West Bengal. So, that is how it is travelling across. Surat, Palgad, Bhosawal in Maharashtra, Nagpur, right, Kharagpur and Dankuni. So, it passes across east-west dedicated freight corridor, new one coming in. You should know the states it passes by. Western and Eastern were two of them, dedicated freight corridor corporation. This is the new coming in picture, exclusive push to infrastructure. Very, very important for this year. Mapping perspective also, again from the initiatives importance also. That is the idea that you should know. Going up further, waterways. We already have established 6 national waterways. This is very important. We have talked about 100 national waterways coming up because given we have perennial rivers and the overall challenge that comes into picture, we need to understand the positives, negatives and the challenges when it comes to national waterways. However, here we are looking at adding more national waterways, and these national waterways will be exclusively important when we talk of the importance. 20 new national waterways that are being spoken of, and National Waterway 5 has now been enriched because we know National Waterway 5 passes through Odisha, and there it is now touching in all the mineral rich areas of Talcher, Angul and other areas. So, specifically it will be helpful. We are also looking at coastal cargo promotion scheme because the movement of freight, if it can happen through coastal routes, that will be very helpful from a larger perspective. So, overall idea is faster evacuation, high speed rail corridors, roads and then also waterways. So, if this can happen, multi-mode transport coming into picture, that is why coastal promotion scheme. Then seaplane VGF, we spoke of this, viability gap funding from seaplane perspective, how this will be largely beneficial from a financial incentive. Government pitching in will help boost this sector development effectively. So, we already have, right, waterways coming in. So, 20 new national waterways announced. The 5th national waterway, which is almost the shortest waterway after your Kerala's waterway here, there it will touch mineral rich areas, coastal cargo promotion and then specifically seaplane VGF. VGF is viability gap funding, that is from waterways perspective. So, infrastructure wise, east-west dedicated freight corridor from Surat to Dankuni in West Bengal, and this is about the waterways coming into picture. Energy security and stability. Now, energy security and stability, we all know it becomes a very primary area for a country like India. If you have to look at stable growth, if you have to look at predictable growth, sustainable growth, energy will become a primary driver. India is not an energy surplus country, it is an energy deficient country. We are looking at multiple sources, effectively working on renewable sources and others related. So, energy security becomes a primary area. So, what are we working on in that line? One, we are looking at carbon capture utilization storage from the environmental perspective, how effectively we can look at that. Power, steel, cement, refineries, chemicals, all these 5 industrial sectors for carbon capture utilization and storage. What exactly do, what is the exact technology we will discuss, but that is something that you have to understand from energy security. The larger idea is transition. We are today looking at many of them which are fossil fuel oriented and non-renewable sources. We are moving towards non-fossil fuel and renewable energies coming into picture, specifically electric vehicles and all others related. So, you can see here extension of custom duty expansion. Further, we are looking at basic custom duty exemption coming into picture. All that line to ensure that there is a larger boost to the idea of energy security, larger boost to renewable energy and non-fossil fuel based energy. So, environment taken into consideration, environment orientation coming into consideration when it comes to the idea here. That further taken up. Now, the last one in this line is city economic regions. We all understand for a large country like India, especially when urbanization is continuously increasing, it is a very natural phenomena. Urban areas are going to be drivers for growth. How can we ensure urban areas will drive growth in one particular sector? That is something that you need to know. That is the overall understanding that has been built across. So, this year's budget speaks about building 7 high-speed rail corridors. 7 high-speed rail corridors. Last year's budget spoke about different mineral and energy corridors. Here, we have 7 high-speed rail corridors. So, where are they moving from? Look at the area. From Delhi to Varanasi, Varanasi to Siliguri. These are all very important regions, right? So, Delhi to Varanasi, Varanasi to Siliguri. Siliguri is part of Darjeeling. Then, Mumbai to Pune, Pune to Hyderabad, right? connecting all industrial areas, Mumbai to Pune, Pune to Hyderabad, Hyderabad to Bangalore, Hyderabad to Chennai, Chennai to Bangalore. These are the 7 industrial corridors that we are looking at, very high speed industrial corridors that we have been working on, so that exclusive railways will be set up, high speed rails, so that this will help movement and this will help larger industry to be set up. This is very important from the idea of mapping also. There was an expectation of a Chennai, Bangalore, Bombay corridor or your Mumbai corridor also to come up. That has missed out this time. But 7 high-speed rail corridors, Delhi to Varanasi, Varanasi to Siliguri, Mumbai to Pune, Pune to Hyderabad, Hyderabad to Bangalore, Hyderabad to Chennai, Chennai, Bangalore. This is how the largest 7 corridors have come up. Very important because these are highly contributing metro cities of the country. In that sense, they will drive growth. They will help benefit larger progress across India. In that sense, this will be beneficial for a larger push ahead. That is how we are going to see this area further. Now that we have spoken of railways, let's take a very quick glance. All of you should know 2016 onwards, we have integrated railway budget very much within the general budget. 1921 to almost 2016, we had 2 different budgets presented, the general budget separately and railway budget separately. Here is the railway budget very much integrated, and I have given you a comparative understanding. All that you have to note here is 2 things. One, operating ratio is one thing that we target. Last year, 25-26, the operating ratio was 98.43 targeted, actuals was around 98.22, but here you are looking at 98.4, that is the target. The better the operating ratio is, the better it will be for revenue orientation coming in, how much you are spending, how much you are earning on that basis. Now look at the second one. The second again is very important in terms of railway earnings. Okay, so I am not getting into numbers. You need not remember numbers as such. It is specific to understand the trend. It is specific to understand railway orientation. Very important public sector economy. So look at the earnings. There are 2 parts of earnings. One is passenger, the other one is freight. Be it any year, freight earnings will be far higher than the passenger earnings. So you see that here also. Passenger earnings are almost 92,000 crore, whereas freight earning is 1,88,000 crore, last year's budget. So what is this year's budget target? This year's budget target is comparatively lower when it comes to passenger, 87,000 crores and 1,88,000. Do I need to remember numbers? No. But how can we ensure that there is a larger balance between the passenger earning and freight earning? Because in railways, we go through an idea called cross subsidization. So GS paper 3 perspective, subsidies understanding, cross subsidization becomes important. So we need to ensure railway fares are competitive to make it a point that freight good transfer does not become too costly, because if that happens, most of the freight transfer will shift to road, and once that will congest the existing national highway network. So from a railway budget perspective, only 2 things. One is the operating ratio, 2 is the railway earnings. This year, we are looking at almost the same earnings when it comes to freight and a little less when it comes to passenger earnings, right. We all know a lot of developments have been happening in terms of railways. So if you have to specifically note that the Vande Bharat project is something that all of you should know. Vande Bharat recently has come up with a sleeper version of Vande Bharat also. The code name for Vande Bharat is Train 18. Okay, so all this can be potential questions. Train 18 has not been asked, Vande Bharat has not been asked. This is indigenous development of high speed, also, right, air conditioned coaches, very high safety parameters taken into consideration. Vande Bharat trains have been developed. We are looking at large amount of investments coming into your fast movement of trains, safety features ensuring. Platinum corridor, we had the golden quadrilateral which was connecting all 4 metro cities via road. Platinum quadrilateral is something the Prime Minister envisioned, which will be high speed trains connecting, the bullet train project. So most of the action is happening in railways. From exam perspective, specifically note Vande Bharat, that should be enough. Here, given railway budget is integrated, you should know the operating ratio and the idea of where is the freight earnings for. You can just get a simple statement question, and on that basis you should be able to answer. Okay, so that's the idea that you should be noting it further. The next one is municipal bonds. Under the first Kartavya, while we talk of city economic regions, municipal bonds. So this year's budget gives very high significance to municipal bonds. So they are trying to incentivize the idea of municipal bonds. So the question is, what is municipal bonds? I'll just give you a basic idea, try to understand, right? We will deal a separate small video specific to municipal bonds a little later, but Remember, all the urban cities require a lot of investments, right? They require a lot of money for development of their infrastructure, for development of all their basic amenities. But all that money cannot come from the government itself, which means a lot of pooling in only in urban areas will now question of where else the investment will go. So, one very viable route is to generate finance through bonds. So, this is a very viable debt market that comes in. So, these municipal corporations or your urban local bodies can float municipal bonds, generate money which is about taking money as debt, use that money for a lot of development projects and from there build across. So, it is a very simple idea. Government agency which is your urban local body effectively will issue municipal bonds. The money that will get generated will fund different initiatives of the government. So, the revenue that you are generating there will be for long term, that will help beneficiaries also. This year's budget has spoken about incentivizing municipal bonds and by which it is encouraging most of the cities to go for municipal bonds. Specifically Kerala and many other cities are now going to target this idea given the central government has incentivized. So, from an exam perspective, what is municipal bonds? Which part of them come into consideration? From public administration perspective, they are further important. Which is the first city in India that initiated municipal bonds? Which is the first city in the world that initiated municipal bonds? This is also something that you should know about. Okay? Taking it further from here now. So, that is the first kartavya. So, summarizing the first kartavya as such, we had about 6 specific areas and then strategic areas that we discussed and we have discussed most of them. Taking in specific consideration, one area that we have not touched upon probably is the legacy industries. About regenerating legacy industries is what spoke about. 200 such legacy industries, regeneration is what the government has spoken about given their importance. Apart from that, we have discussed most of the areas. Most of them are very important, all of them have an exam oriented relevance. So, please note them. So, first kartavya was about accelerating and sustaining economic growth. Now, let us come to the second kartavya. The second kartavya is to fulfill aspirations of our people and build their capacity. Right, fulfill aspirations of people and build their capacity. So, specific people centric development there, one, aspirations to be fulfilled and second, how can you continue to enrich their capacity so that development will be oriented. That is something that we are taking further. Let us go ahead. This is kartavya number 2. Definitely, when you look at how can you fulfill aspirations and enrich their capacity, education comes in, health comes in, right, social infrastructure definitely comes in. So, what is happening with respect to education? We are looking at education not simply from literacy aspect, education to employment orientation, education to enterprise orientation. So, that idea where education will become a driver for Vikasit Bharat, education where you will be able to develop a man force or a human resource that will be almost 10% of global share by 2047, right, services orientation coming in consideration. Committees to prioritize the potential growth here and further taking in AI jobs and skills. How is AI going to disrupt this market? How India need to prepare itself with respect to artificial intelligence and make our human resource AI ready, AI capable. That is also something the budget is speaking about. So, education to employment, education to enterprise, right, while you are enriching the capacity. Second, education not only from the perspective but multiple institutions related so that you can, one, National Institute of Design in the eastern region so that you can enrich capacities of people. 5, university townships, this is something that is a very wonderful concept. University townships to be created around major industrial areas so that you build a buffer zone. The idea of National Investment Manufacturing Zones, NIMZs that had earlier come. Girls hostels to encourage more STEM based education among women, STEM is all we understand. Then 4, telescope infrastructure facilities. Now, this can become a question, right? I am repeating here, 4 telescope infrastructure facilities has been spoken about. We all know from science and technology perspective, the idea of telescope becomes very important. We already have existing telescope observatories. One is in Ladakh, one is in Tamil Nadu, almost 2 in Tamil Nadu, the other one is in Kerala. Taking all this in consideration, we are now looking at 4 more telescope infrastructure facilities to promote astrophysics and astronomy. This can also be a potential question from your science and technology perspective. Okay, we are looking at the second kartavya. It talked about enriching capacities of people and aspirations of people to be fulfilled. So, education to employment, education to enterprise, specific education institution orientation. We talked of National Institute of Design. 5 university township, girls hostel to enrich women in STEM education, 4 more telescope observatories. This can become a potential question. We already have 4 telescope observatories and this is again coming in picture. Okay, so that's the line that you have to pick up. Taking further. Now, Ayush has been a definite area. So that's where government has been putting in a lot of effort, which is Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani and Siddha, homeopathy, right. So this is the Ayush push the government has spoken about. In that line, we are establishing now this year's budget speaks about establishing 3 more All India Institute of Ayurveda. We have what is called AIMS, All India Institute of Medicine. Now in the same line, we are talking about establishing 3 new All India Institute of Ayurveda. Hagidre, where is the present All India Institute at? We have one major in New Delhi and we have a satellite center in Goa. That's the existing idea. And then the present budget talks about 3 new All India Institute of Ayurveda. That is the Ayush push. 5 regional hubs to coming into specification. Also the idea where we are looking at building human resource. 1 lakh allied health professionals. So how can you train more allied health professionals? This is which human resource orientation comes into picture. 50% capacity increase in district hospitals, establishing emergency training in trauma care, and then 2 more NIMANS to be coming up, right. NIMANS is National Institute of Mental Health and Allied Sciences. So NIMANS is going to be very important in terms of neuroscience research and also mental health, given mental wellness is a very important area. So NIMANS, 2 new NIMANS centers will be established, one in Ranchi, Jharkhand, the other one is in Tezpur, Assam, okay. So these are the 2 places where, so we looked at education, we are now looking at health, Ayush push, 3 new All India Institute of Ayurveda, and then human resource development, 2 new NIMANS centers coming up, and also training a lot of allied health professionals that is coming up. So this is enriching capacity. Kartavya number 2. This year's budget uses a new term and that is orange economy. All of us may be caught in surprise, but that's something that we are known to every day in and day out. What is orange economy? What does it cover? How can this become a potential question? We have talked about blue economy, we have talked about green economy, we have talked about multicolored economy asset, but what is orange economy? This year's budget talks about orange economy. And mind you, don't get confused, don't get to be a little narrow telling. Orange economy probably is only this, this and this. It is many things more. Remember, orange economy is about advertisement, animation, architecture, craft, creative digital technologies, design, graphic, fashion and textiles, film and television, heritage, library, media, museums, galleries, music, theatre, photography, video games, publishing, visual arts, radio, writing and journalism. All this comes into the idea. So, how is it different? Remember, what is traditionally in place is there, but orange economy is in the contemporary perspective where content making has become a major idea. All of us are getting into YouTube, all of us are trying to create contents, we are trying to build an economy around this, right? Be it reels, be it content creation, be it selling through social media, all this is part of your larger orange economy. So, if I am a textile merchant, I am selling to normal shops, that is a different economy. But if I am a merchant where I am making content, where I am making reels and shorts, I am trying to sell through YouTube, I am trying to sell through my Instagram channels, that comes under the orange economy, okay. So, culture, art, craft also comes in along with what the budget specifically has spoken of. So, in the budget this time under the idea of orange economy, they talk of what is called AVGC, right. So, what is AVGC? How is it related? But please, I know all of you will study about AVGC and say, okay, orange economy is only AVGC. No, orange economy is further beyond. What is all that? That's something that we'll pick up, okay. So, what is the idea of orange economy? Orange economy is AVGC, which is animation, visual effects, gaming and comics. Yes, it is about media entertainment, it's about design, art, culture, sports economy, digital creation, all this coming in. This year's budget talks about Indian Institute of Creative Technologies in Mumbai, right? So that you can give a boost to this learning. It also talks about AVGC sector getting a larger financial push. So, this is going to be a very big idea as we go ahead because today's era is into orange economy. So, don't be surprised if there is a question and question of orange economy need not be related only to AVGC, it can be further ahead. This also can be orange economy, this also can be orange economy, but if it is using your idea of social media, YouTube, and through which the sales are happening. That is the present trend. That's how you have to understand the area coming into picture so that you'll be able to pick up questions. So, one big idea that can become a question this time is orange economy. Okay. Going in further, tourism and heritage. We all know India is a rich culture, rich heritage based country, and tourism is a large orientation. Tourism is also a huge employment generating economy as such because it gives you a large sunrise sector in that line. So, India will be hosting the first ever global big cat summit. Okay, so we have heard of multiple diplomacy. Have you heard of wildlife diplomacy? This is something that India is pitching, the first ever global big cat summit. Okay, that's something India wants to host, through which this idea is coming in. That is under the idea of tourism because India has a large population of big cats. Specific under the area of heritage and tourism, we are talking about national destination digital knowledge grid so that we can build a thorough knowledge orientation, cultural, spiritual heritage. We are trying to develop 15 archaeological sites and we all know this from Indus Valley times. Lodal, Dholavira, Rakhigarhi, Adichalanur, Sarnath, Hastinapur, Leh Palace, all this 15 different archaeological sites in that line. Integrated East Coast corridor, we have already seen that from Dankuni in West Bengal to Surat in Gujarat, and Buddhist circuit around Arunachal Pradesh and the northeastern regions. Buddhism is a very important area. So, heritage and culture specific from exam perspective you have to note is the idea of first ever global big cat summit, wildlife diplomacy in consideration, and then all developments here. Okay. Taking it further, we all know the Khelo India mission, right? India is trying to build big in sports. We are almost sure of hosting 2036 Olympics. Okay, so 2036 Olympics is a dream that we are looking at. In that line, we have started on the Khelo India mission. Multiple such developments here: sports science technology, systematic development, talent orientation, sports infrastructure development, sports textiles development, all that under the idea of Khelo India mission. So, sports is going to become a very important idea coming into consideration, and that along in the second Kartavya. So, remember, first Kartavya was accelerating and sustaining growth. The second Kartavya here again is in terms of enabling people's capacity building along with fulfilling their aspirations. That is your second Kartavya, and we have discussed many areas related. Now, we are going in terms of specifics where we are discussing the third Kartavya. The third Kartavya is taking everybody along, every community along. So, it is aligning our vision to the larger idea of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. Okay. So, when the government came to power in 2014, the Prime Minister's slogan statement was Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas. We further improvised and we talked about Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas in 2019 and 2022. On the eve of 75th year of independence, we further enriched and said Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas. A wonderful new idea was brought in which was called Sabka Prayas. Sabka Prayas was an important area where we talked about in the next 25 years, while we are heading towards making India a Vikasit Bharat, in that line, everybody has to become part of this movement. Sabka Prayas is taking everybody where you will be leading that growth. That's the idea of Amrit Kal. So, the third Kartavya for this year's budget in the framework is about aligning the vision with Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, which is the idea of inclusive growth. So, what is the idea of inclusive growth? So, first most important area, agriculture and farmers become very, very important. So, here we have talked about agriculture in terms of increasing incomes of farmers, agriculture in terms of diversifying their incomes in nature. What are the specific key points? Where can questions come from, right? 1. 500 reservoirs and Amrit Sarovars to strengthen fisheries sector. So, Amrit Sarovars is wetland oriented agriculture, wetland oriented fishing, that is something coming. So, Amrit Sarovar is something that you have to note. Second, enterprise development in animal husbandry. So, livestock is going to give an income security and that is where we are looking at development. So, enterprise development animal husbandry. Next, coconut promotion scheme. We all know from a large part of India, especially down south, coconut becomes a very important crop and coconut promotion scheme has been pitched. Here one exam point that you need to notice from MSP perspective, okay. So this is an exam point. So from exam MSP perspective, right, what is MSP given? MSP is given to copra, correct. What is the difference between copra and coconut, right? Coconut is the entire idea. Copra is when you remove the husk and you hold, right. So kannadadalli ನಾವು ಹೇಳೋದಾದ್ರೆ ಕೊಬ್ಬರಿ ಅಂತ ಏನಂತೀವಲ್ಲ, ನೀವು ಕಂಪ್ಲೀಟ್ ಚಿಪ್ ನ ತೆಗೆದು ಏನಿರುತ್ತಲ್ಲ ಅದು copra. So MSP is there for copra, okay. ಅಲ್ಲೂ ಕೂಡ there are two types of, there is a milling copra and there is a ball copra. ಫುಲ್ ಆಗಿರುವಂತ ಕೊಬ್ಬರಿ ಯಾವುದು ನೀವು ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡದೆ ಇರ್ತೀರಾ ಅದನ್ನ ಬಾಲ್ ಕೋಪ್ರಾ ಅಂತೀವಿ, ಒಂದ್ಸತಿ ಕಟ್ ಮಾಡಿದಾಗ ಅದನ್ನ ಮಿಲ್ಲಿಂಗ್ ಕೋಪ್ರಾ ಅಂತ. ಸೊ MSP or minimum support price is given to copra, right. But coconut is a very important idea, so we have a coconut promotion scheme. So this is where, you know, don't be surprised again if you have a question on MSP to copra this time, or what are the different crops for which MSP comes in. Government has already announced MSP for copra this time, almost assuring about 1.5 times of their production cost. That's how MSP comes in. It's a very important idea, okay. So Amrit Sarovars, enterprise development, livestock, coconut promotion scheme, transforming India, cashew and coca. Now this is again from a large scale development orientation, how Indian agriculture can become enterprise oriented and development specific. We are talking of Indian coca and Indian cashew specific in terms of export orientation coming in. And last one is Indian sandalwood ecosystem. Now after the idea of Pushpa, we saw red sandalwood became related question. So twice continuously in previous year we saw red sandalwood becoming a question. This year's budget talks about India developing a sandalwood ecosystem. So sandal and sandalwood ecosystem can definitely become a question. So this is all very important, okay. Second, increasing farmers income. We all know a committee related, doubling farmers income was a target that government took. Dr. Ashok Dalwai's committee was a committee on doubling farmers income. So that is something that you should know. Further ahead this time, in the same idea of farmers, the third kartavya that we are speaking of, farmers or agriculture, we are speaking of a new scheme called Bharat Vistar. What is Bharat Vistar? We will discuss that. In simple, it's an AI enabled idea. Government wants to ensure artificial intelligence is not only to the rich, powerful or the haves, it goes to the ground. So AI orientation, artificial intelligence orientation is across the idea. So Bharat Vistar is a tool in that direction. Next, SHE, which is your self-help groups. So self-help group entrepreneurs that are coming in, they will develop something called SHE marts, and we are also talking of further in the same line of Lakpati Didi scheme. This is also something that can give lot of economic benefit and push, okay. So under the third kartavya, in the idea of Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas, the first target is agriculture. We've spoken of all exam important points from coconut promotion scheme to the idea of sandalwood, right, Indian coca and cashew, entrepreneurship development related, doubling farmers income committee of Ashok Dalwai, Bharat Vistar, an AI tool, and SHE marts, which is your self-help entrepreneur marts under the SHG idea, okay. So this is something again very important from this year's exam perspective related and how they are going to specifically benefit, okay. What is Bharat Vistar? We spoke of Bharat Vistar, very brief idea in terms of this is the tool. In simple, it's an open source multilingual digital platform. So benefit given India large diversity, multiple languages that are spoken. So it will be multilingual digital platform, virtually integrated system for agricultural resources. So if a farmer somewhere wants some information, wants some idea, Bharat Vistar can become a real idea. So that's the idea. There is a function and there is a final end beneficiary. What is the platform? How does it benefit? Look at this. This is how it is going to be. So you have Bharat Vistar. You sign up, set up your profile, you ask, enter your details, you have specific questions that will be addressed and that information will finally reach out to the farmers. So personalized farm guidance will be given if you set up your information related, where we are definitely making use of artificial intelligence. So artificial intelligence is something that we are specifically working on, AI powered insights and working well. So Bharat Vistar, generally the name is a little, right, when you take into consideration, deceptive. When you look at Bharat Vistar, we may feel it's a question on infrastructure, it is about encouraging infrastructure and all such. But remember, Bharat Vistar is specific to agriculture and there again AI oriented multilingual tool. That's how we are looking at. This can become a question point, okay. Watch out. Next, under the same idea, right, Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas. We talked about agriculture, we talked about the tools related. Now, Divyang Jan. right? So Divyang are people who are physically disabled, right? So these are somebody whom we want to call Divyang. So there are a lot of programs that are specifically launched. One, Divyang Kaushal in terms of their skilling. The other one, Divyang Sahara in terms of how different necessary equipments can be supported. So skill building, which is industry relevant and customized, and then Sahara, where artificial limbs manufacturing corporation to be established, scaling up or different, PM Divyasha Kendras to be established so that their assistive technology marts to be built. So all that targeted under the Divyang population. Okay, so this is under the Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas idea. Now comes the concept of Purvodaya states, because you want to take everybody along, and when you want to take everybody along, every state also, right? So Purvodaya, general conception when we talk of Purvodaya is about northeast. This is not northeast, this is Purvodaya. Purvodaya is a specific focus in this time's budget where talking of 5 different states. Remember, this is Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, West Bengal, Jharkhand, Bihar. These are the 5 states that we are talking about. So Purvodaya is an initiative aimed at all-round development in eastern region, Bihar, Jharkhand, West Bengal, Odisha and Andhra Pradesh. So these 5 different states that we are taking in consideration, and Purvodaya initiative talks about. Now we all know there are traditional benefits or traditional strengths of each of the states. Andhra Pradesh, very rich in its agriculture growth, tourism. Odisha, again, given a coastal state, has its own benefits, also a mineral rich state. No doubt the same strengths hold good to West Bengal, Jharkhand and Bihar also, right? So taking the strength areas of each one of them, how do you develop a scheme that can specifically be targeted under the larger idea of inclusive growth? That's how these are taken into consideration. Okay, so that's where we are taking into consideration. Exclusive East Coast Corridor is being spoken of, an Eastern Coast Corridor which will link from the area of coastal corridor from Chennai all through the coast that goes in from India's perspective. This will further be extended, give our opening up to Bangladesh, now a little in trouble, Myanmar, Thailand and others. So you see this is what has been worked around under the idea of Purvanchi or Purvodaya initiative. This is from India's perspective, and then Bangladesh to Thailand to Myanmar, all this under the overall connectivity. So East Coast Corridor under the idea of Purvodaya initiative, and how that can be overall expansion coming into consideration and benefits that are taken into account. This is how the idea comes. Okay, so Purvodaya states is something that you should know. Buddhist circuit, we have spoken about this. Specific states of Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Assam, Mizoram, Tripura and Manipur. Most of them are northeast states. Each one of them have a religious and cultural orientation, and on that basis, specific target that we are looking up in this area wise that we are working in, how this will be beneficial. Focus on preservation, restoration of Buddhist temples and monasteries. Buddhism is always a core area for art and culture and ancient history perspective. Teachings of Buddhism, right, relics and the idea of how do you restore, everything becomes important. So this can be questions. We are establishing a Buddhist circuit. Okay, this again from third Kartavyas perspective. Okay, we looked at 3 Kartavyas. All the 3 Kartavyas had a specific emphasis. We have only touched those are exam relevant and from where questions can come. Okay, Kartavya number 1, accelerating and sustaining growth. Kartavya number 2 was specifically taking into consideration of how you are looking at specifics, enriching people's capacity, fulfilling their aspirations. Kartavya number 3 was inclusive growth, aligning the vision to the idea of Sabka Saath Sabka Vikas. We have seen all these 3 Kartavyas, related programs and schemes under these 3 structures. Okay, you will get a larger picture around them. This completes the first part of the budget. But this year's budget, as we have been continuously telling, was a very important budget, right? We have told you through the economic survey also, economics is going to be a very, very important area this year, given the budget and the economic survey. Along with that, the Finance Commission comes into picture, right? 15th Finance Commission had a 1-year extension because of 2019 developments of Jammu and Kashmir becoming a union territory, GST getting implemented in many other sense. So what was every 5 years, 2020 to 25 it should have been, became 2020 to 26. So we are in 26 now. For the next 5 years, we have the 16th Finance Commission already has submitted its report. This year's budget has included that as part. So what is the 16th Finance Commission suggesting? This idea. Now from polity perspective, you should all know it is a constitutional body under Article 280. It is set up for 5 years term and it has all recommendations. So you don't need to know the constitutional aspects. What is the term? Who are the members? Who was the chairman? So 16th Finance Commission chairman was Dr. Arvind Panagria. He was also the first deputy chairman of or vice chairman of Niti Aayog. So the 16th Finance Commission submitted its report. That has been integrated into the budget. So the recommendations of the 16th Finance Commission will be valid for the next 5 years. They have done some minor tweakings. They have addressed the concerns of many states that you have looked at. Sakashtu states, especially Karnataka and other states, had a problem in terms of how they have been disbenefited for controlling population. All this has somewhere tried to be addressed. So what is it done? One, the divisible pool. What is Finance Commission doing? It is the balancing wheel of fiscal federalism. We all know that. While we talk of balancing wheel, it does what? It does devolution. Most important power of Finance Commission is devolution. So it does vertical devolution. So vertical devolution is from center to states, and then it does horizontal devolution. So for horizontal devolution, it sets up, now it has come to states, how much will each state get? Okay, from state number 1 to state number 28. So this is the idea. So this is the responsibility. So when you look at this idea now, this particular perspective taken into consideration, the vertical devolution from centers to state, this it has retained the previous figure. So that is now 41%, which was also the recommendation of 15th Finance Commission. The more important or more watched about perspective was where will we head up here. That is where it has also thrown not much surprises, but it has done some course corrections necessary. So you have to know the number here. We will have an exclusive idea about 15th Finance Commission, 16th Finance Commission and its importance, but this is something, since it is integrated in the budget, that you should know. Further going up, what is the, this is vertical, which is 41%. What is the horizontal devolution? The horizontal devolution is important to note. Okay. Now this is the horizontal devolution. I have just given you a comparative understanding. What was it 15th and what was it 16th? We had population, demographic performance, area, forest cover, fiscal effort. These were the criteria under 15th Finance Commission. The 16th Finance Commission does one tweak in terms of criteria. It removes tax effort, it adds a new criteria called contribution to GDP. This is also one way where you are trying to benefit the southern states which are contributing higher to the GDP. So contribution to GDP has been added as a new criteria, tax or fiscal effort has been removed in the 16th Finance Commission. What is one other thing that they have done? One other thing that they have done is, as part of demographic performance, till now we were taking what was called the total fertility rate. Now in this Finance Commission, there is a shift from TFR, that is total fertility rate, to population growth. This is going to definitely benefit the southern state because the southern states have performed well in terms of controlling their population. So 15th Finance Commission ಗೂ 16th Finance Commission ಗೂ ಏನು ವ್ಯತ್ಯಾಸ ಇದೆ ಅಂತ ಗೊತ್ತಿರಬೇಕು. ನಂಬರ್ಸ್ ಗೊತ್ತಿಲ್ಲದೆ ಇದ್ರೂ ಪರವಾಗಿಲ್ಲ. ಒಂದು ಹೊಸ criteria add ಆಗಿದೆ. The new criteria is contribution to GDP. You have removed this. There have been changes in the numbers, but demographic performance they have shifted from TFR, which is total fertility rate, to population control. So how effectively I have looked at population growth from 1971 to 2011, that is taken. We still know the numbers that have been taken for population demographic performance is 2011 census, because the new census is still to come. So that census is starting this year 2026. New census figures will have a large relevance also for delimitation and the changes that is coming across. So the 17th Finance Commission will integrate the 2026-27 census. We have to wait for that, right? So 16th Finance Commission is integrated. You need to know the constitutional aspect of Finance Commission. While you study all about the Union Finance Commission, question can be about State Finance Commission. Okay, it's a constitutional body, mind you. So know everything around it. Not necessarily every number, but basics, because this year is a year of Finance Commission. So you should know. Question can definitely come. This prelims, this mains, next year prelims, next year mains. You should know this. Okay, going ahead from here. That completes part A of the budget. Okay, so part A of the budget is largely socio-economic and political. It covers the society, the economy, and the political priorities kept in mind. We saw it was a Yuva Shakti driven budget, 3 specific kartavyas over different areas that were included, and multiple schemes and programs that have been coming in. Now let's get into the part B of the budget. The part B of the budget generally is understood in numbers, generally is understood in perspective of tax and different initiatives. This year's part B was a little different. They not only took in numbers, they also took many more perspectives related. They took in development orientation also specifically. So what was the economic side, the fiscal side of this year's budget? Now we are getting into part B of the budget. The part B of the budget, very quickly, I am not dealing in details, I am just quickly running through. There is one very important thing in part B this year, that we have a new income tax law that will be applicable from April 2026. Remember, we were still under 1961 Income Tax Act. We are coming to a new Income Tax Act this year. That is one very important area. Apart from that, a quick run through comparative analysis, that is what we are going to in part B. Coming again to part B now. Alright. This is budget at a glance. The previous year 25-26 and this year 26-27. Right. Again, do I need to remember numbers? You should not. Do I need to by heart? Need not. But very quickly understand receipts wise, right? Revenue, capital, expenditure, revenue, capital. Capital expenditure goes for asset creation. Revenue, receipts, revenue, expenditure is non-asset creating but regular in nature, fixed time frame. That is the fiscal policy understanding. So, higher the capital expenditure, better it is. Why? Because more asset creation. So, this year capital expenditure target is around 12 lakh crores, which is good, beneficial for the economy. Public capital expenditure, mind you, not private, public, which means the government investment. The target is around 12 lakh crores, right? Revenue receipts coming in are around 35 lakh crores, specific taking into consideration of how you have to manage revenue expenditures. So, there is a revenue deficit that you can see, these are numbers. So, you need not worry about numbers, this is budget at a glance. Now, coming in, fiscal consolidation, it is a very, very important roadmap. If an economy has to be stable, if the economy has to ensure the parameters are strong, manage the risk that the global economy can face, consolidation is a primary idea. India has been effectively working. One very important law that all of you should know as soon as you talk about fiscal consolidation is FRBM. FRBM is Fiscal Responsibility Budgetary Management Act. Now, we all know FRBM became a law in 2003 and then we had FRBM 2.0 in 2012. Okay. This year's budget specifically mentions this terminology called debt to GDP ratio. Now, debt to GDP ratio was mentioned as part of NK Singh committee. NK Singh committee was this FRBM review committee that was set up in 2017. So, that idea recommended the perspective of debt to GDP ratio and they talked about 60%, right, which is center 40 and state 20. This year's budget talked about fiscal consolidation where we are heading to around 55.6, which is well within the limit. This is taking both into consideration, which is good, right. So, we are talking about 40% as a target and we are heading towards a target presently at 55.6, right. This is good. Fiscal deficit is also coming down. We are setting a target, an estimated target of a 4.3. We will see that deficit targets in terms and further non-debt receipts coming down. All that we are working along. In that sense, fiscal consolidation is on a strong path. Good news for India when it comes to fiscal consolidation space. We are doing good work. Deficit trends. Very quick run through for you to understand. Right. We all know the highest deficit is the fiscal deficit. Twin deficit parameters important from economy, one is fiscal deficit, the other one is current account deficit. Current account deficit part of balance of payments where we talk of capital account and current account. Here it is fiscal deficit, right, the total deficit of the economy. Very quickly from as an economy teacher, right, what is fiscal deficit? Fiscal deficit is total expenditure, right, minus revenue receipts plus non-debt creating capital receipts. This is the idea, okay. So, we take the entire expenditure, revenue receipts plus non-debt creating capital receipts. So, why am I discussing this? Last year we had this question, they had given you numericals in terms of if this is the loans, if this is the revenue, if this is the expenditure, then what is fiscal deficit. So, in that way you should know basic understanding there, right. So, why do we use this term specifically as non-debt creating capital receipts? The idea of non-debt is specifically used because loans or borrowings don't become part of this. So, this is why the idea of non-debt, okay. So, that is what you have to note, fiscal deficit, right. So, having said that, question here is about deficit trends. The budget gives you a larger idea from 2019-20 to the current year, you see the trend. The only jump that you can observe here is this year. This year there is a jump from 9.2, 7.3 in different deficit. Why is there a jump? This is COVID year, okay. So, when there was COVID, there was a huge spending that went across in that line, the deficits were on a high. After that, we have seen a continuous glide, which is good news. Okay, so this year's target for fiscal deficit is 4.3, for revenue deficit is 1.5. Okay, which is good because what is the FRBM target? The FRBM specified target is fiscal deficit should be around 3% and revenue deficit should be looked at 0. So that is what we are targeting. So we are heading closer to that, which is good news. So that's the perspective from the economy's idea that you have to understand, right? This is deficit trends. Quick comparison from previous year to this year. Last year target was 4.4. We are maintaining that 4.4 idea. This year target is 4.3. Okay, so deficit comparison understanding, you will get this picture here. Further going ahead, where do we finance this deficit, right? This is again an exam question that we are always expecting, right? What is the different ways by which you can finance? Market borrowings, short-term borrowings, securities against small savings, others, which includes external debt, drawdown from cash balance, others. So 4 different sources of deficit financing. So first thing all of you should know is what are the different sources. Market borrowing, short-term borrowing, securities against small savings and other sources, which also includes external debt and drawdown on cash balance. Okay, so these are different ways by which we fund our deficits. So which is the highest? The highest is market borrowings. Okay, the highest is market borrowings. After that comes in the idea of securities against small savings, and then we see the idea of other deficits coming into picture. Okay, so that is how you have to see. If you remember these 4, that should be enough. This is a comparative analysis, that is last year, this is the present year. How do you finance deficits? Okay, so fund deficit, sources of financing deficits. Now, last year, that is during the 25 budget, 25-26 budget, there was a lot of effort in terms of changing the tax scheme. A new tax structure was brought in, right? The new tax structures through which there is larger rationalization, and all this had a larger benefit. So earlier it was 30% above 10 lakhs. Now you see that 30% scheme is about 24 lakhs. So they have given you a tax exemption up to 12 lakhs. There will be 0 tax for a person individual, income from all sources. This was something major change that we came across. So in the last 2 years, we have seen major rationalization in tax rates. Last year budget talked about direct tax, specifically income tax. This year, through the year, we saw there was GST rationalization, right? From 4 slabs, we came down to 2 slabs. These 2 tax benefits have played a major role and will going to help India from a larger perspective in terms of expansion of the economy, necessarily will generate a lot of jobs. So what is the benefit of this as we see this further, right? So benefit of this as you see this further is the new tax structure speaks about ease of living. This is something the budget has spoken about repeatedly. So you should know what is ease of living, how this concept came in, right? The idea of cost of living index that we discussed when we talk of inflation, but the taxation idea, ease of living. On one side, from the industry's perspective, we talk of what is called ease of doing business, okay? So this is from industry's ease of doing business, but from an individual's perspective, the budget talks of what is called ease of living. Similarly, we have talked about rationalizing penalty and prosecution. It's not a huge punishment, so how do we rationalize that? Because evasion can come down. Cooperatives have been very specifically targeted. They are going to be growth drivers in the upcoming games. So cooperatives, tax benefits have been initiated. IT sector given services plays a very, very important role that has been given. So we talk of what is called a safe harbor provision. So safe harbor provision gets a lot of definitions in this year's budget. Okay, so what is safe harbor? What is the idea related to that is something that you have to note. Attracting global businesses by bringing down specific taxes, rationalization. Tax administration, so there is a joint committee of 2 ministries. One is the Central Board for Direct Taxes and the idea of Ministry of Corporate Affairs, so that there can be further benefit, and last safe harbor rules which we spoke of. These are all new tax structures, new important measures that have been initiated which definitely are going to benefit. Just knowing them should be sufficient. Ease of living is a new word that they have pitched in. So who was the first economist who talked about ease of living? What is the idea of ease of living? That's something that you should pick up. Okay. Going in further now. Right. So what are some quick measures that they have initiated? We talked of tax holidays, exemption for foreign companies, exemption for non-resident Indians with respect to MAT, certain critical minerals given benefit, major accident claims tribunal, TCS brought down tax your at source, extension of time with respect to returns, ITR 1 and ITR 2, indirect taxes also, custom duty exemptions, duty free imports, single interconnected digital window. So all these reforms both in direct taxes and indirect taxes will help. You see the idea of current value cap being removed, exclusive economic reforms, all these reforms in direct and indirect taxes are targeted at giving a boost to industry and hence developing, right. So, that is the line that we are taking it for. Okay. So, indirect taxes have seen a larger benefit, specifically benefiting services and also taking in closer to what? Ease of living, that is mentioned once again. Okay. So, this is in terms of taxes. One of the biggest change this year is the idea of what do we call as the Income Tax Act 2025. All of us should know India till now was under Income Tax Act 1961. The Income Tax Act 1961 will be replaced by, right, Income Tax Act 2025. This is going to be operational from April 2026. Okay. So, that is the date that we have set up. April 2026 is when it is going to be operational. It was introduced in February 2025, referred to a joint committee, and it went through a certain path. So, very effectively discussed. Parliament has discussed, your standing committee in the Parliament has come across with suggestions, after which the Parliament withdrew and included those suggestions introduced. So, very effectively discussed, debated bill that has come across. A long pending reform in direct taxes. Income Tax Act 1961 will be replaced by Income Tax Act 2025, a very long pending reform that comes in, very, very important from the economy's perspective. Okay. So, that is the idea that you have to pick up. What is going to be this and how it is going to be taken into consideration, right? How is this going to benefit? What are the changes, right? We will do this separately, but very quickly, what are the changes that it has initiated? Income Tax Act 2025, it is trying to reshape the tax framework, modernize, simplify India's outdated tax law. Income Tax Act is effective from April 2025. It simplifies the language, removes obsolete provisions, consolidates and restructures provisions, right. It is replacing a word called assessment year with tax year, so that there is clarity. Generally, there is confusion, assessment year, assessment year. So, now they are introducing a new term called tax year. Given the digital economy is on a push, we have introduced a clear idea of virtual digital assets, so that there is clarity. So, this is very briefly what the new income tax law has been bringing about, but effective provisions that you can see, new Income Tax Act. This can definitely become a question in terms of how it is going to benefit, probably not this year, but next year. Trends in tax receipts, just a trend comparative to previous year to this year, right. You see gross tax receipts are on a continuous increase, so that line. But one important thing to watch, last year the target was around 12 lakh crore, here we are looking at a reduced target of 11.2 because we have not been able to achieve that, right. Otherwise, direct and indirect taxes, the direct taxes are a continuous high, right. Only in 1 year, which is the COVID year, where you saw indirect taxes had increased. So, in the past 5 years, we have seen direct taxes have been higher than the indirect taxes, but in COVID time, indirect taxes was higher, right. Given economy was on a downslide, there was consistent decline of both production and supply, and there was a standstill. We had experienced stagflation during COVID time. So, that is the emergency that you have to take off, right. A certain exception, otherwise direct taxes are good, direct taxes are progressive in nature. So, it is good, direct taxes collections are always higher, indirect tax collections are lower, but both are necessary from the economy's perspective. So, this is a comparison from previous year to this year. Okay. So, this is, right, a traditional understanding that you should always note. Rupee comes from, rupees goes to, right, in the overall 100% understanding of how it comes in. What is the highest income that is coming in or a revenue that is coming in? Close to 24% of the overall idea is coming as part of borrowings, okay, 24%. That is why in terms of expenditure, if 24% of the overall revenue is in terms of borrowings, highest expenditure is interest payments, okay. So, that is how you see this idea specific. So, 24% of borrowings, so highest expenditure is in terms of interest payments. After that, the next high income is corporate tax, your income tax, customs and all others coming in. Here, state share is 22%, finance commission transfer 7% and the rest of them coming to picture. So, this is in the overall 100 rupee or 100 paisa, rupee comes from and rupee goes to, it is an idea. From exam perspective, you have to note which is the highest, which is the lowest, that line you will be able to take in consideration. Non-debt capital receipts is about 2%, which means the highest in capital receipt is in terms of loans. That is why interest payments are also very high. So, this is this year's idea. Now, let us pitch this from the perspective of what is the next this one. So, this is a comparative figure. This is this year while you take off. 24% was in terms of borrowings. Last year also it was the same, right. If you are paying interest of 20%, Last year, the interest payment was about 20%. So you see the approximate stability coming into consideration. And other than that, corporate tax, income tax, others, there have been minor changes that's come into consideration. We are targeting 18%, here it was about 17%, right. So that's the changes of previous year to this year in terms of revenue and expenditure, right. Just a comparative figure, not very necessary, but the understanding that you have to go through. Where does rupee come from in the overall idea? Much in detail. Borrowings and liabilities 24%, corporation tax 18, 21. So just an idea repetition there. Rupee goes to highest goes in terms of state shares. Apart from that, interest payment 20%. Okay, so idea related. Now this is a very interesting breakdown, right? I would suggest all of you take a pic of this when you are going through, right? I'll share this idea, and this is important. This is directly from the Hindu, where you see how there is an increase and decrease. One interesting thing to note here is, in the defense sector, we see a 0.32%, that's around 32 basis points decline in defense expenditure. Why? Because it says, due to Operation Sindoor, there was a very high expenditure. So there was the revised estimates going higher for the previous year. So this year, there is a slight decline. Otherwise, there is no decline as such. So defense expenditure as such. So in every area, you see, what is important to note, where is the highest expenditure in the idea? The highest expenditure we should all note is going into transport, okay. So transport is getting the highest expenditure coming into consideration, right. After that is defense, 5.99 lakh crores, but 5.94 lakh crores, that's the difference. Highest is in transport, next comes to defense. That's the understanding that you have to see through when you're looking at multiple other areas that have been pitched into consideration. You will get a larger perspective of it, right. That's the understanding that you have to see through different areas on the overall expenditure. So overall expenditure is pitched in on that basis. Every area, what is the picture coming into consideration, you will have to take, okay. Now, central government expenditure, last year taken in consideration was about 50 lakh crores, this year we are targeting 53 lakh crores, right. Where is the highest? The highest is interest, 12 lakh crores, here it is 14 lakh crores, the highest again 5.98 after interest payment is going to transport, 5.94 to defense. So this is the breakdown. They will just ask you from the same perspective of the top 3 and the bottom 3 coming into consideration. So in that way, you should know the idea coming in terms. This year's and the last year's budget for your consideration. Interest payment last time was 12 lakh crore, this time interest payment is 14 lakh crore in terms of the borrowings. 5.48 on transfer, 5.98 on transport, which means capital expenditure is continuously increasing. Good. Defense last time was 4.91 due to Operation Sindoor is increased, revised estimates wise. This year it is 5.94. That's the idea that comes into picture. Okay, so this is again a comparative picture in terms. Key numbers, not very necessary, just you should know in terms of what is what, how is deficit calculated, the revenue deficit, effective revenue deficit, fiscal deficit, primary deficit, how are these numbers coming in, formulas related, fiscal policy wise, this is important. Last year itself, 2025 prelims, you had a question, right, giving you larger numbers, okay. That was not maths, that was pure economic concepts. You need not remember numbers, I am repeating, need not remember numbers, but concepts need to be important. What is revenue deficit? What is effective revenue deficit? What is fiscal deficit? What is primary deficit? How are they different from each other? That conceptual clarity will help you to solve questions, okay. Last part in the idea, what has been the resource transfer to states, right. This is again comparison of last year to the present year, continuous increase in the resource transfers to state. Transfer to states have been continuously increasing over the previous years. In that sense, larger benefit, especially given the finance commission transfers have also been increasing, government was also pushed in the larger rate, okay. Budget fine print will give you a lot of picture in terms of what central sector schemes, central sponsored schemes, how money from the center is going through. On that line, you will be able to manage. So this is again, right, the part B of the budget, the last idea coming into consideration, okay. That largely brings us to a conclusion of what we had to discuss from the part B of the budget. Budget is never complete without discussing Tirukural and Tiruvalluvar. Tiruvalluvar has been a legend in terms of what he talks about. Here he talks about the idea of good governance, how the idea of good governance is reflective. So he says, reforms however are not the destination, right, reforms are not the destination. So what is it? Providing good governance primarily involves being responsive. So if you have to provide good governance, you have to be responsive, responsive governance coming into consideration. So in the idea of what he wants to say, he says, just living beings are, as living beings expect rains, citizens are expecting good governance. So good governance is the ultimate derivative that we look at, right. So transparent, accountable and good governance. In that line, budget becomes a major tool. That largely brings you to the conclusion as such, okay. So budget largely speaks about a lot amount. when we study budget, this is the primary idea. Why are we studying budget? Questions, what can come, right? So we have discussed budget from a holistic perspective. Part A and Part B schemes, 3 kartavyas that kept as a structure. What are the different schemes, programs that came in? Part B of the budget, how is it different? What is the fiscal deficit? What is the parameter? New income tax act that is coming and all that we have discussed. Questions will definitely come. Questions can come from schemes. Questions can come from trends related to budget. New ideas that have been introduced to the budget. I am telling you, we will come up with a series of videos. This is just the beginner. It's yes, an idea. Very short videos will come up very soon where we talk about each specific idea. What is biopharma? What is an integrated semiconductor mission? What is the idea of rare earth minerals and related aspects of it? What is the idea of chemical parks, right? What is the new income tax law? Each of them will be picking up very short videos with very quick relevant information. We'll share good notes related to that. These will be relevant for this year's prelims 2026. They will also be relevant for mains and also next year. Any data, any idea will be relevant for this year and the next year. That's how you have to see. Budget is a holistic document. They have been talking of multiple schemes. So many schemes have been spoken of over the last few years in terms of budget. All these schemes are relevant. What are the schemes that are talking about in that line? These are some things that will definitely come about. All these schemes and programs, where to pick up? Do we need to read everything? Budget gives you the direction. Okay. We have spoken about economic survey, we have spoken about the budget today. 2026-27 budget has been an overall picture, a lot of questions to inhale from the exam perspective. That's the idea that which we close. We want to tell you, we stand together to ensure your dream becomes a reality. At India4IAS this year, we have taken a new slogan. At the completion of our 5 years, we are talking about shaping leaders for a new India. Each and every one of you have a capability and ability to become leaders. And these leaders for a new India that we are looking at, a Vikasit Bharat that we are envisioning for. So let's stand together. If you have an aspiration, we will dedicate together. Achievement can definitely be yours. Come along, join the journey. Thank you very much for watching through the entire idea. This year's budget can give you a lot of questions. All the very best to all of you who have watched. Prelims 2026 is upcoming. Do a lot of test question solving. Lot of practice that will help you. Never hesitate to come back to us. We are always there to help you. At India4IAS, you come to be the first priority. Thank you so much once again. Very happy studying to all of you. See you very soon with much more explainer series. Very short videos on explainer series specific to topics here, continuing there. So we'll leave you with that. Thank you so much once again. This was Budget 2026-27. Thank you.